Welcome to the Day Camp Director Training. We hope you enjoy this. Again, I'm Katie Thompson, Vice President of Girl Programs, and I am Jackie Deneen, Director of Partnerships and Girl Events. So on today's agenda, we will be talking about new resources and procedures for 2017, mandatory requirements to keep in mind for this year, and Day Camp Director tasks. Okay, so we are going to move right in to our new resources and procedures. So this year we have a reward for attending the new Day Camp Director training. We will be hosting a drawing on April 1st for 5 lucky day camps to win a staff-led program at your day camp. If you are selected, you have the choice of a birds or bugs staff-led activity. More details on the program part of this will be announced later once the winners are announced. So just by attending this training, you're going to get entered into a drawing. That's kind of cool.
And I was in one of the trainings, and I just want to say that it was a really amazing training, and it's a super fun program. Okay, so as we mentioned kind of earlier in the webinar, for those of you who are just joining us, if we have any internet connection issues tonight, we're going to be posting it on Rallyhood. So Rallyhood, we introduced this last year and had great results. So we are bringing it back again this year for 2017 Day Camp resources. I'm sure many of you saw this webinar posted in Rallyhood, as well as some of the other items that we're going to be talking about tonight. It's a great place for day camp directors and assistant directors to connect with each other. You can post pictures, you can ask questions, you can share best practices in terms of what's worked well for you. Maybe you need some programming help or some activity ideas for girls. This is really a great space that we would like to have kind of be a community for all of the day camp directors to just sort of share. One thing that we did want to note is if you have a specific question about a GSWPA policy or a form that you need to fill out, instead of posting that on Rallyhood, we would really recommend that you email that to customer care or give us a call at the customer care line. That just allows us to get back to you faster because while we do check Rallyhood pretty regularly, customer care is really our go-to place for our day-to-day operations, and then that way we'll have your call logged, we'll know your question, and we can get back to get your answer to you much faster.
So now we're going to move into mandatory requirements. In this section, we will be going over new resources and reviewing some familiar Girl Scout safety requirements. This section is important because it ensures the safety of girls and of the volunteers and guarantees that everyone is on the same page. So we'll start with the training. Since there have been changes this year, we would like all directors and assistant directors to have consistent information. This training is the first task you need to complete to have a successful day camp this year. Thanks so much for being here. Just a reminder, if your assistant director is not on this webinar, this is being recorded and will be up on the website, I would say, by Wednesday of next week. So, and then you can utilize this training for not only your assistant director, but if you want to use it for your volunteer day camp staff, that's fine too.
Okay, so one of our new resources that we have this year is the online day camp application. So the picture that you can see here is the service unit application, the landing page that you come to first. So we wanted to highlight some of these requirements in terms of the timeline so that your day camp application needs to be submitted at least 8 weeks prior to the start of your day camp. And you can submit an updated roster up to 1 month prior to the start of your service unit day camp. So we are going to click on this form and take a look. Okay, here is the application. So this, again, is the landing page that we mentioned that you will come to. If you haven't done so already, you want to start by submitting your initial service unit day camp application. And I'll try not to go too quickly because I know that makes the webinar a little laggy sometimes. But it's really straightforward information, things that you should be familiar with from past day camps that you've held. We need to know your service unit, your day camp name, your director's name, phone number, just that basic information that we tend to ask for every year. We streamlined it and put it into an online form for you.
One thing to note, if you do want your day camp advertised on our website, which is possible and it's fun, we just got a nice little tidbit on your flyer to put what grade levels you are accepting at your day camp, because it helps advertise your day camp a little bit better. So that's only if you want it advertised on the website, and we'll contact you if you haven't given it to us already.
And again, if you have any questions while you're filling this out, please feel free to call customer care or email us at customercare@gswpa.org. All right, so we'll go back to the PowerPoint.
So this is something that we happened. Well, actually, it found us this year. So for the Pennsylvania Department of Health, there is a permit, and if your day camp is 5 days or longer, then you are required to get this permit. In your manual on page 4, under the planning section, you will see the Defined Act 497 of 1959 that references organized camps. Be sure to read this and follow instructions to make sure you are compliant with the state of Pennsylvania. This act is still currently under construction. So what that means is that we were contacted by this organization and they asked us about all of our organized camps. And so then we said, okay, tell us the requirements, and then they said, we'll tell you in a couple of weeks because we're going through it right now. So as soon as we get that information, we will make an announcement on Rallyhood, and we will post it on the day camp page on the website. Now, if your camp is 4 days or less, disregard this information. It does not apply to you. And on the day camp application, we do ask you for the day camp start and end dates, and so a reminder will pop up about the need for this permit.
Okay, so volunteer management. So volunteer screening, all volunteers involved with day camps must be registered members of Girl Scouts, and they must have their clearances on file with GSWPA in order to be in compliance with Act 153. This act took effect partway through the summer last year, in July. This year, it's already in effect, so all day camps will need to make sure that all their adults are screened and approved volunteers.
So to go into a little bit more detail about volunteer screening, we have showing you. This is the website. I'm sorry. This is the web page on our website that shows the requirements for the clearances. It's also on page 7 of your manual. And remember, we said this once before, but we'll go into a little more detail. For those volunteers who are not cleared or members, those names have to be turned in 1 month before your day camp begins, and that's just because that's how long it takes Pennsylvania to process clearances. It's not one of just our rules that we made up. So we just want you to know that sometimes it takes that long to get the clearances back. However, if you have volunteers that are already members and are already cleared and in our system, then they can show up day of because they're already cleared. So just note that's the difference.
And also, that's at least 1 month before the start of your camp. You can submit them as soon as you have their names, and you can get that clearance process started for them so that you don't have to worry about making sure that everything, the state and the FBI and everything comes back in time. But 1 month is that deadline. We can't guarantee that anyone submitted after that 1 month point will be able to get through the clearance process.
So that brings us to MyGS. What you can see on this slide is a screenshot of where to find MyGS, on our website. Once you have turned in your application and you've submitted your original roster, you can log into your MyGS and manage your adult roster. So I'm going to let Jackie talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so one thing that we added this year to make it a little bit easier on you for the resources is that we did a video that can be found on the volunteer-led day camp page that walks you through the steps of how to look at your day camp roster. So we would really encourage you to check out that video. It goes step by step. We even made kind of a sample day camp unit with our staff members so that you could see what it should look like on your account. But it all starts with coming to that MyGS and clicking that member profile to log in. But we've also made that video so that you can have that to reference at any time in case you forget the steps.
So let's talk about volunteer management certifications. So now that you have your volunteers in your roster, which by the way, you remember when we showed you the WUFU application? The first choice was to turn in your original application. The second choice was to update your roster if you had, and then it gives you a choice of either 10 or less or more than 10 adult volunteers. So that's where, when you enter those in, those are going to go into our system, and then when you log into your MyGS, that's where they'll be. That's kind of cool. But now that you have your volunteers in your roster, and you can check on their volunteer status by logging into MyGS, you need to make sure that they have the correct certifications for your activities. And we had a question about this, and so all certifications, including first aid and CPR, should be sent to the email address that's on the slide. And the reason for this, it's not in your day camp manual, but anytime there's an outside organization that does certifications like Red Cross or American Heart Association or the National Archery Association, any of those companies that we use to certify volunteers, we don't get a copy of the certification. Only the volunteer taking the training gets the copy of the certification. So to prove that you have the certification, we need you to send in a copy to the email address on the slide. That's the reason that's there.
Okay. Moving on to safety and health plans. Okay. Sorry, we skipped one. There we go. Safety and health plans. So we just wanted to emphasize that it's very important to have an emergency plan in place for all scenarios. And this is one of those points when we really want to emphasize looking at your manual. The manual goes into detail. You can find the information about safety and health plans on pages 19 through 21. So even after this webinar, we still really encourage you to go and look at the manual and everything that it recommends. So why do we have emergency procedures? To keep girls safe. Obviously, always the top priority at GSWPA. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail. If the slide changes. Okay, so the key elements of an emergency plan or procedure are emergency signal systems. For instance, a car horn or a whistle. Just make sure whatever your plan is that all of your staff knows it. The daily roster is very important. We even have a daily check-in system in our office and in each of our offices so that we know if there's a fire drill, we know exactly who's here and who's not. So that's the purpose of your roster. So if there's some kind of an emergency and the fire department says, is everybody out, you have something to check it on. Know the weather for the day. Is it going to snow? Is there tornadoes? Whatever's happening, know the weather for the day. Practice your drills. This is best done on the first day. Make it fun, though. It doesn't have to be serious, scary. It could be like fun. Yay, fire drill. Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to practice your drill for a tornado, maybe you pull a girl out and you have her pretend to be the tornado, and then practice what everyone does. The drills can be fun as well as informative for the girls.
Practice a missing camper drill. You know, most of the time they're in the bathroom, but you know, you need to make sure that your staff are counting the kids and are recognizing when someone is missing. Make sure you have the GSWPA phone numbers and the customer care number and the emergency number. These can be found on our website. You can also email in to customer care and we'll send you the emergency procedures if you don't have it. It's also in your My Resources on the website.
And it's important to note that that customer care number, the 1-800-248-3355, that is only available during business hours. If you call after business hours, you'll be leaving a voicemail. But the emergency number that we have, which is available on the website, and we'll make sure to also post to Rallyhood, that is an answering service that is available 24 hours a day. So when in doubt, if you are running a twilight camp and you've lost track of if you're in business hours or not, we recommend that you call that answering service.
And then, of course, make sure that you have accident incident forms, which are located in the appendix of your day camp manual. And an accident or an incident is something that's a little bit more than a scratch. So if it's an accident, if it's a serious accident, you need to fill out paperwork. You know, if you feel like you have to contact your parent about it, if it's more than a mosquito bite or an ant bite or a knee scratch, then fill out the piece of paper. An incident is something that disrupts the activity that's going on. So if a child has a normal temper tantrum but then recovers, that's not an incident. But if a child does something so disruptive like, you know, bites somebody or takes their clothes off or something like that, that's an incident.
Yes. And also an incident might be something like if you did have a tornado warning and you had to move everyone indoors or it came close or something like that, but no one was injured, you still might want to fill out that incident form. And it's something where we'd rather have it than not have it.
So, health procedure plans. Who is responsible for providing health care? So,
all right, so if we're looking at dispensing medication, which is a key element of a health procedure plan, we have a list of those professionals who are allowed to dispense medication. So this could be a licensed physician or dentist, a licensed physician's assistant, a registered nurse, a licensed practical nurse, or an adult who has passed the Department of Human Services Medication Administration Training Program. And that is a state-run program, which you, I believe, can find at the Health and Human Services section of the state's website if you want to find out more. But again, this is one of those sections where we really encourage you to reference your manual, pages 14 to 18, and it lists everything that you would really need to know in terms of dispensing those medications. And this is another example where we talked about earlier the certifications that you would want to make sure if you have a registered nurse or a licensed physician or something that we have a record of that and their certifications at GSWPA.
And one thing to note is that if you are first aid CPR certified, is actually a Pennsylvania state law that you're not allowed to dispense medication. However, if it's an emergency, then you know, I think you know how to make the right decision. So, but it's also you're a day camp, so you don't have to dispense medication at your camp. If you were an overnight camp, you would, but you're a day camp, so you can work it out to where either you have the right person dispensing medication, and then that way you're covered all the way around, or you can work it out to where either if the child can self-medicate, like if it's an inhaler or an EpiPen, or a parent comes and gives the child their meds. So the key elements of the health procedure plan is to know the local emergency services and to ensure you have established communication methods for like your first aider and how to get in touch with them when they are in camp and not at the health center. So for instance, like walkie-talkies, or put a note on the door that says, I went to this unit and I'll be back in 5 minutes, kind of thing. Just make sure everyone knows the plan.
And with the local emergency services, it's always a good idea to let your local police department or your local fire department know that a day camp is going on. Nothing may come of it, but sometimes there will be police departments that if they are aware that something is happening, that they might do some extra passes and drive-bys during the day, or they might just come and check on you to make sure that there's not anything that you need. So it's just a really best practice to make sure that the local emergency services are aware that you're there.
Okay, so this is a picture of a health log. What's not shown here is that your health log is supposed to be a spiral-bound notebook, and when you use that notebook, you're supposed to not skip lines. So you shouldn't skip lines between treatments. Now, what this is showing you is an example of what should be on those lines. The point of the slide is to show you that when you treat anyone for any purpose at a first aid station, you need to log the information. Okay, so you need to log the time, the name, the problem, the treatment, and then the person giving the treatment needs to sign. So this is an example of just what the line should look like. So you can't print this piece of paper off and then take it with you. You actually have to have it in a spiral-bound notebook. And then if you have no injuries, which would be awesome, this is what we would prefer your health log look like. A blank piece of paper with the name of your day camp, the date, and then nothing to report. So in the perfect world, we would love to get all of these.
Okay. So health forms. I'm sure that most of you are pretty familiar with the Girl Scouts Western Pennsylvania health form, since we need it for just about everything. But we did make a new update this year, and we have a lovely fillable health form that is located on the website and is also available on Rallyhood. You need to make sure that all girls and adults participating at your camp have health forms. Every now and again we get a question of, adults are adults, why do they need to fill out a health form? Well, people can become incapacitated. They might get overheated and pass out. It's really important to make sure that you have a health form for both girls and adults, just in case of emergencies, because you never know what may happen. A couple of things that we do want to highlight about the health form, though, is that health forms are confidential. So you want to treat them as confidential. You don't want to make a copy for every single adult that's going to be in your camp. You want to make sure that there's certain designated people that have the health forms. We also would ask that your camp nurse or first aider really determine what information is need to know and by what adults. So for example, at day camps, you're going to be in nature and around bees and things. So if a girl has a severe bee allergy and carries an EpiPen with her, then that would be important for her unit leader to know, so that she could keep an eye out, both for if the girl got stung or if there was, if she noticed bees in the area. If a girl has a strawberry allergy and you know that strawberries are not on your menu for the week, then that's not really information that a lot of people would need to know, other than, probably the person that's planning your lunches for the week. So it's important that the nurse or your first aider kind of look over the health forms and really decide what information other people need to know.
And notice that just as about a month ago, this form is fillable. So, and online, but you can also save it as a PDF and print it off. So it's both ways. So it should make parents filling out the health form much easier.
And easier to read the handwriting too. Okay. All right, behavior management. So this is an item that gets glossed over on occasion, and we wanted to take a moment to really highlight the importance of having a behavior management plan. Obviously, it's important to make sure that safety and communication and all those key items are accounted for at a day camp, but having a good behavior management plan in place goes a long way to ensuring that everyone has an enjoyable time at day camp, both the girls and the volunteers. So we would recommend that you look into your manual page 11 through 12, and review the suggestions for behavior management plans and sort of best practices, and really talk this over with your volunteers. Volunteers who know what the expectations are for behavior feel more confident in their abilities to work with the girls. So that's why it's really important. Some key elements that you're probably going to want to address are what you do in the case of bullying, what you do in the case of cliques, if you see some cliques forming or girls being left out, and homesickness. You know, we're talking about day camps, but girls can still feel homesick if they're at a day camp, especially if there's outside factors that you might not be aware of, like a sick family member or maybe a pet that passed away. It might seem like there shouldn't be a reason for a girl to be homesick at a day camp, but we know that there's a lot of other factors that may come into play.
Okay, so now we're going to move into day camp director tasks. So these are the required submissions. We talked about your application. We also, if you're having activities that require the trip and high-risk application, be sure to turn that in and make sure that your site is an approved site that has the correct insurance, and make sure you're following safety activity checkpoints with those activities. And one thing to note right here is that we did correct the trip and high-risk procedures form. Before, the rifles and archery were combined into the same block, making it look like there was an age requirement on the archery, but it was really just for rifles. So that's been corrected, and
it'll be live on the website hopefully tomorrow with the clarification and separating those two out.
So, and archery is that brownies and up can do archery as long as the equipment is the correct size, and then the rifles are 12 years old and up. So. And then make sure that you submit your health records and your and the logs. So the records could be your daily rosters of people checking in and checking out, and the logs can be your health logs. And then as of today, the final evaluation is up on the day camp page. It's a WUFU form, which it's an online fillable form to make it easier for you. So you guys can check that out, but please don't turn that in until 2 weeks after your day camp, because it's all about your day camp.
So just going into a little more detail about the records and logs that Katie just mentioned, you'll want to make sure that you have those check-in and check-out logs. Again, that daily roster is really important in case of emergencies, so that you know everyone who's there at camp. Your health log, as we mentioned, in that bound book. I think we said spiral bound, but you know, as long as it's bound, the point is that it needs to be some sort of log where you can't insert pages in and out. It needs to be bound, so it can't be altered like that. Accident incident forms, we've included the image of the accident incident report form that's here. Council policy is that this needs to be turned in within 24 hours. It does have a signing section on the back side of the form. If you need to turn it in 24 hours and then maybe wait a day so that you can get it signed and scanned, it's just really important that we know that that incident happened as soon as possible. And again, you can call the emergency line if you feel that it's an emergency, in addition to filling out the accident incident report form, and we'll make sure that everything that's covered everything that needs to be covered is covered.
Okay, so this is the submission timeline. So again, you know, your day camp application must be submitted 8 weeks before the start of your day camp, and your adult roster must be at least 1 month before the start of your day camp. So before or during your camp, like we just said, your trip and high-risk application as needed, and that form has a submission timeline on it. Your accident incident forms, like we just said, 24 hours from the time of the accident or incident. And then after camp, within 2 weeks after the end of your day camp, you know, your records and logs, updated roster, and your health logs. And by updated roster, we mean go back into your MyGS and double check that roster with your check-in, check-out to make sure you don't need to add any more girls or adults. And if you do, use the online application and check that you're adding more adults to your day camp. That's how they will get into your MyGS. And then again, your final evaluation should be submitted within 2 weeks. And hopefully the process this year is much easier for you.
Oops, sorry, almost forgot to change the slide. Okay, so another key responsibility is volunteer training. So just like we are training all of the directors and assistant directors, we would also ask that you go back and train all of your volunteers who are going to be at your day camp. We have this referenced on page 8 of the manual. And the reason that we don't make a standardized training for you to deliver is that we know that each and every day camp is different. You have different start times, different end times, different activities, different emergency procedures, different locations of health staff, different behavior plans. So, you know, we really provide this training and the manual to the directors so that you can then customize your training for your day camp volunteer group. So, you know, like we said, we are going to post this training online, a video of this training online, so that you can use it for reference or inspiration if you'd like. But we really encourage you to make something that is applicable and useful to your own day camp. And that manual should hopefully go a long way to making sure that everything's covered that you need to have covered.
Okay, so in summary, and don't worry, we know we have questions, so we're going to answer those next. But in summary, just a reminder that this training is only a highlight of the manual. We know that you can read the manual, so that's the reason why we didn't read it to you over this training. And we hope that you all have successful day camps. And if you have any questions or concerns, remember you can ask your fellow day camp directors on Rallyhood, or you can email or call customer care and ask us a specific question, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah. And if you send in an email, all we ask is that you put day camp in the subject line. That way customer care knows to direct it to us quickly.